So great, yeah. Today, so we welcome very special guests onto the Manufacturing Leads podcast. Emma's a general manager from IMS Heat Pumps in Sheffield. And what I'm very excited about is that Emma's the first female on the podcast. I'm a massive advocate of getting women into underrepresented markets, such as manufacturing, construction, engineering. So thank you, Emma, for being there. The first female, the first of many. How are we? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to be invited on. Nice to be the first woman. Yes. Always looking to spread the word that it's not just for the male, pale and stale amongst us.
Exactly that. And like I say, I didn't want this podcast to be like almost like a boys' club. And I think, as I mentioned, they're massively underrepresented, particularly on the senior side. There's not enough female leaders. So I think more people like yourself who could be an inspiration to them, I think the better, which we'll dig into later. But I'd like to kick it off with the same question, if you don't mind. So what does it mean to you, Emma, to be a leader, would you say?
Well, it's funny, obviously, I know that's your first question, so, I've been pondering on it. And it's a difficult one because in some respects, I don't class myself as a leader. I've kind of fallen into this role by dint of being a doer. Yeah. And leading by example. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty and get stuck in, and that's kind of been my mantra from being young and going through university. And I always had jobs when I was at school, I had jobs at university, and I just think for me and for this company, it's an honour to be a leader. I've got some phenomenal, fantastic colleagues and staff members. And the way this company came about, I was kind of like, elevated to that position. And so I find it, incredibly, it's an honour to lead the team that I'm leading.
It's good to hear that. And, in my experience, I think the best managers are the ones that lead from the front still. Do you know what I mean? I think if you ask 100 people, they're the best managers are the ones that get stuck in and show how to do it, to show them how to do it, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know whether, when we talked about some of the questions and stuff, and one of the ones, do you find it vocational on the job training versus, qualifications in academia? And I think there are certainly roles. You wouldn't want a brain surgeon who's got no qualifications, would you? Exactly. But at the same time, a lot of the whole kind of business and leaders and CEOs, the view that it's, it comes with an MBA or it comes with, an economics degree and all these kind of things. When actually, people who make things happen, people who are, the ones who are, in the trenches and then can sit back from the trenches and go, well, I've been there. I know what it's like. I know how to fix this. I know how, I'm not just sat in a tent at the back being a visionary, yeah. Pointing and doing, talking the talk, but not walking the walk. I've worked for people like that before. And, you become disillusioned eventually where you're looking for the action and that it's not happening.
100%. And I think you can get respect much easier, like you say, if you've done that. And I think people are much more likely to respect you if they know you can do it. It's I think one of the most difficult jobs for anyone is going into an organisation to manage a team where they've not worked in that business. There's challenges with both, I think, isn't there? Because suddenly if you're thrust into a managing position and you have to manage people who you weren't managing before, that's got its challenges too, because see in a different light. But it's a really difficult job, I think, getting into a place where they don't know what you're like on the tools. I actually find it really hard now. So when we first started the business, when I was hands-on, I was recruiting, I found it quite easy because I just led from the front and it was almost like I do as I do to some extent. Now I find it really hard because a lot of the people have never seen me recruit, and I feel like a granddad telling war stories about I did it this way. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot harder. I think it's much easier if you can show them, isn't it? It's difficult.
Well, it's funny. Again, looking and thinking about this podcast and leadership and leaders and managers you've worked for and all of those kind of things. And this business is going through a bit of a transition in terms of going from managers and people who just do integrating teams and team leaders and all of that kind of view. But some of the stuff as I'm reading, because still learning every day. There was this one thing that really resonated, and it's like, you've got these superheroes, you've got the myths, oh, remember when we all did this and we sorted that out and it was amazing. but it's the lessons that you learn from those, crazy stories of how you got out of the trenches, all pulled your socks up and sorted it out. It's unpicking those lessons and making those processes around it so that the lesson is learned well, and you're not back in the trenches there having to unpick the same problem again. That is where a lot of companies go from just growing to scaling. The difference between the two is where are your feedback loops and where are your processes for learning, so that you're not. But the great stories are the ones that kind of bring you together as a team. Oh my God, and when John did that,
you don't know your boy.
Sarah came in, she had to speak to this client, and we just pulled it back by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what makes you cohesive.
Yeah, I agree. Isn't it? It's almost trying to get the balance right now, because if I think of my business, I worked recruitment for 15 years before I started business, and we have some decent enough firms, but they weren't really process driven. I had some good managers, but I can't say I was managed unbelievably well, not to the demands that people demand now to be managed, I would say. And I think, we're going through a stage now where we're trying to document every process we do, which actually I think is going to be great. But when we never had that, I just think the business has probably moved on. Do you know what I mean? I think people need that a little bit more, but you bang on you've got to try and still get a bit of that thrown in the deep end. And that's when you really learn. Do you know what I mean? When you haven't got a manual, it's one of those, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've just been doing an induction with a new starter today. He's a very experienced salesperson, but obviously we've got new systems and processes that he's never seen before. And I'm just like, you just got in and press the buttons. Unless you press the buttons, here is a manual. This shows you what, where the buttons are. But until you press them, it's going to be still hard work, And I think that's on a simple basis. But in order to, kind of build that confidence, it's not only just on a team level, but as an individual level, there's a lot of doing,
100%.
I think, and that comes back to your leaders. It's like, who's doing it, who's picking it up, who's doing well, and the view that you can have a team almost full of leaders, because they're all picking it up, they're all feeding back, they're all gelling off each other, they're all going, this could be better, and if we did it like that, that's the kind of
that's culture, isn't it? That's where you've nailed that culture, 100%. I completely agree. Great. Look, we've gone off, which I love doing. We've gone off the tangent, which I love. I classify that, which I don't like structuring these. But just a bit of a background, if you wouldn't mind, because what the good thing about it, obviously, we've never met, we've never worked before, spoken once before. Love the fact you're from my hometown of Sheffield, even the fact I've just learned you the sport the wrong side, the wrong club.
Help the blades.
But let's take us back to right in the early days, because I'm really interested to see what you're doing now in terms of how that happened, in terms of where that came from. So what happened? Yeah, what was the really early days looking like?
Oh well, I mean, I always had a job, and as it happened, those jobs were always in kind of the hotel and catering environment.
Okay.
I had a job when I was 13 doing table layout for a big bank. You've probably heard of it, Baldwin's Amiga. It was huge in Sheffield. It was the place to go. Yeah. I was table layup after school, and then I was, silver service waitress there, and bar, and did a lot of stuff there and earned some money. And then I didn't really superly get on well with my A levels, if I'm honest. I'd kind of, turned on, tuned in, and dropped out at that point. Yep. And when looking at what I was going to do after my A levels, it was funny because my dad was at home and he threw the Sunday Times clearing at me, and he went, "You want to go to university?" And I was like, "How am I going to do at university with not great A-level results?" And I started, and there was one for Manchester Metropolitan University to do hotel and catering management. And I was like, well, I've got a bit of background in that. I've worked in deli counters, and I've worked silver service, and I've worked bars, and I've worked layout, and those kind of things. Yeah. And so I got accepted at Manchester Met based on my work experience, which at 18 I thought was quite a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah, nice. Really? Yeah.
But I really, really got on with university. I loved Manchester Met. And one of the things I liked about my course was it was a sandwich course. And once I'd, got my head out of my arse and decided to, do something with my life, I went to the course tutor and I said, what's the best placement you've got for the next year? And he says, well, we've got this place. It's management training with the Hilton in America. And I was like, I want it.
Wow.
And so, I really focused and really knuckled down and got some great results. And, I just enjoyed my time there. I had nice balance between, you know, the Manchester scene as it was, you know, it is the early 90s, and getting the work done. And it was work that I enjoyed. I think, you know, that's the difference, isn't it, between, you know, work and education. You know, you've got to really enjoy what you're going to do if you're going to perform your best. And then I went over to the States and was over there for over a year doing management training with the Hilton franchise. It was owned by a company called May and Jabara, and they owned about, I don't know, 20 different large hotel chains down the Eastern Seaboard, Radissons and Hiltons and, you know, that kind of thing. And I loved it. And I went around all the different departments, learning about how to, you know, manage the different departments and the processes and the skills. And I tried to stay in America, and they tried to help me stay in America. You know, they were like, yeah, you can stay. We can see you managing one of our properties. And but it didn't work out. Couldn't get the green card unless I wanted to be a nanny for 3 years, or
really
marry an American or graze sheep in Texas. They were my options. So I came back, and I'd put off my third year at university because I came back halfway through the academic year. And so I thought I'd better get a job before I start again. And I got a job, what was called a restaurant supervisor, but was effectively the assistant manager at a restaurant. Again, you'll probably know it, the Bee Chief Hotel.
Yeah, I went there myself a bit. Yeah, that was one of my first ever jobs, 13, washing pots.
There you go. So it had changed hands and was owned by a company called Chorus when I started working there. And I, again, you know, I just enjoyed my job, you know. It was busy restaurant functions, busy wedding functions, you know, meetings during the day. And when it came back to go to university, I thought to myself, why am I going to go back to university and get a degree in hotel and catering management, which, if I'm lucky, when I come out in 2 years, I might get a job as an assistant restaurant manager, because they ain't going to hire you as a manager straight out of university.
Yeah.
And I appear to already have one. And so I didn't go back. And I ended up getting promoted with that company to operations manager for a hotel outside of Sheffield. And I just really enjoyed it. And the thing about hotels, though, is it's long hours, it's underpaid. And so you get like a dedicated core of staff who work in hotel and catering.
Yep.
And until you kind of fall out of love with it, it's got you. It's like, you know, you're part of a massive team who's all striving to, you know, create a customer experiences, really.
Yeah.
And but I fell out of love with it, and I fell out of love with it just before the millennium. Mm-hmm. And quit. And then I went down to London, had a great millennium, came back and was like, bloody hell. And I had a small stint in public sector. Sheffield was home to big civil service offices there, so I had a small stint there, which drove me mental.
Wasn't for you? Yeah.
No, I mean, you've come out of, you know, hotel management where, you know, every napkin counts to, you know, some bigwig telling me that they don't want one of those pens out of the stationery box, you know. Yeah. This is what I use, and it's £30, you know, and you're like, what's the budget for stationery? And they go, oh, you just spend until you get to the end of the year, and then they tell you if you've got any left, and you're like, blew my brain out, you know. I think this is probably what's wrong with the public sector, full stop. But anyway, just, you know, it was not for me. Uh-huh. And I ended up I got a job for a business development consultancy.
Nice.
And they worked a lot with the manufacturing SME base of South Yorkshire, Rotherham, Barnsley, Doncaster, Sheffield. And they used to do an annual, what's going on in manufacturing companies, you know, what's interesting you, where do you come from, you know, what are you looking for? And overwhelmingly one year, all the responses were to do with energy efficiency, energy savings. And they were heavily involved in, you know, technology transfer was a definite thing then. It was definitely a buzzword, but, you know, where are the technologies that the companies are looking for, and can we match them up? And, you know, when you started looking at that particular time, it was like 2001, the most kind of environmentally friendly thing that was occurring was like a nappy recycling facility in Doncaster. You know, we were talking, you know, like, oh, the vegetarian, lentil eating, you know, recycling people who were banging on about climate change and CCFs and all of that kind of stuff. But it was a real thing for the manufacturing base of South Yorkshire, you know, one after another, these responses were coming in. And so as a company, we started doing a lot. We already worked with Business Link and at that time Yorkshire Forward and the Carbon Trust and those kind of things. And there was a lot of Objective 1 and 2 money flying around for the loss of the coal and the steel industries. And there was real support galvanized for an incubation cluster, if you like, of new and renewable energy companies. And the guy who ran that company, Steve Daw, was quite visionary really at that particular time, in terms of seeing this as an opportunity and trying to galvanize a region behind it. Mm-hmm. And some of the companies that passed through that particular company, ITM Power are in Sheffield because of the business development consultancy I was working for.
Oh wow.
There was all kinds of different companies, but one of the ones we came across was a company called Eco Heat Pumps, and it was a chap called Phil Moore who was down in Oxford selling these weird and wonderful ground source heat pumps to consumers, and we came across him. And he said, "Yeah, it's just a replacement for a gas boiler, but you put these things in the ground." And we're like, "Whoa!" In the same way, ITM Power, like, "Well, it's just we create this hydrogen." Like, "Whoa!" All this crazy stuff that was going on. And we brought Phil up from Oxford with the lure of some Objective 1 grant money, but you've got to start your business here and develop your business here. And developed his business he did, and he sold out to Danfoss Thermia in about 2008. Okay. And he at that particular time it was one of the biggest business to consumer heat pump sellers in the UK.
Wow.
Now Phil's been my friend ever since. He just lives up the road. Yeah. I went about my business and he went about his business. But then he came in about 2013 and said, Danfoss never fulfilled my dream of what I can see for heat pumps in the UK. Yeah. It's still a very fragmented market. There's still no one big player. I think it's something that, we should look at investigating. And Emma, is there any grant money available for that?
She's dropping, yeah.
So, made a few calls. And there was, potentially he could have got some more grant money, but it was all kind of like done in a slightly different manner. And what he was doing was bringing together 3 companies, all of whom principals had worked with him or for him at, certain particular periods of time before he sold out to Danfoss, and like merging it together to create like a bit of a super company.
Nice.
Which, sounded fantastic. The view that there is, a national brand. I mean, clearly Octopus are out there now, Eon and British Gas are all looking for that. Yeah. But, again, another visionary of his time saying, it needs to happen. And anyway, unfortunately, that particular company that was created, that went into administration in 2019. Okay. And out of that, myself and some colleagues bought the assets. Right. And restarted Alan's original company. Alan had been one of Phil's subcontractors. He'd had this heat pump company since 1997. He'd kind of brought his lot in with this the view of a bigger company, and put his company in mothballs. So we restarted IMS heat pumps, nice. And here we are. 3.5 years later. Doing great guns. So based in Sheffield, based in Perth in Scotland. So cover quite a big breadth of the country. Two lots of legislation, 2 lots of grant funding regimes.
It's I love that proper journey. There's loads to unpack there.
Journey, it has been a journey.
But it has, and it probably feels after 2 years almost you've just got started to some extent. Imagine you
So 3 years ago, we kind of put the foot on the gas with this company. Yeah. And again, in terms of me, looking at the transition period of this company and stuff, there was a webinar that I was watching, and it was saying about, growth and how the first 3 years is kind of like fun, and then it starts getting sick. And now, when you're just like,
where's the fun? Where's that kicking?
Tell me when the fun starts.
That's how I'll describe it. Yeah, maybe I think it's one of those actually. Looking back, you probably see as fun comparison as when it gets. Do you know what I mean? To some extent, the longer it goes on, the more complicated. Probably the more it
Maybe with
less fun.
hindsight,
Yeah,
in
exactly that.
another 3 years' time,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
look back
that'll
and
be
go,
fun.
it was fun.
That was fun. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely get that. I guess for you, then, obviously, what I see from that as well, there must be some internal resilience, but also drive. I mean, what's really interesting is I think now the people I know work very hard. For me, there's almost a change between they worked hard from a very early age for whatever reason. I don't classify myself as someone who at all. I'd particularly high intelligence at all. Quite from it. I had to work very hard at school to get average grades, but I've always worked hard. I don't know why. It's something I've always had it in me to try and work very hard. And I honestly think that's because when I was 13, I grafted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In terms of, if I think about that job, which was golf, it was golf clubs, it was restaurants, it was in hospitality myself, it was pot washing, then waitering, and seeing how hard people worked in that industry for not a lot of money. I think that really kicked me on for years after that.
I'll go even further than that. I will say anybody who has had any sustained amount of time in a hotel and catering background should not be dismissed from any CV pile. They will have such a collective amount of transferable skills. If you can deal with Screaming Sheila on a face-to-face basis, you can certainly deal with Steve on the end of the phone. If you can upsell a dessert with every coffee, you can certainly have a go at sales. You can certainly got logistics. I mean, if you do not know which way up a pot wash is run, you're going to get in a mess super quick. In the same way, your pass is going to be a mess, your tables are going to be a mess. Your attention to detail in terms of, stains on your cutlery and your glasses. And then the big picture of being able to deliver it all at the same time,
100%.
on time. Yeah. It's such a rounded, honestly, anybody who comes past my desk that's got any kind of sustained amount of time in hotel and catering is worth a serious conversation with, because they have got a bit of everything. And I'm blowing smoke up my own arse now, but I know they've got a work ethic, but not a lot of money. They're all striving to create people, they know an internal customer versus an external customer, because you better make sure them chefs are happy too, and your housekeepers are happy because they're all looking after you. And also they can make the split decisions, all this conflicting priorities, and how would you handle it? Well, you've got a hot steak that's burning a hole in your hand here, and somebody wants to know where the toilet are. You can make a decision in a second, in a heartbeat, as to what's going on. You've got a bit of everything.
Completely
I
agree.
love people out of hotel and catering, me.
Yeah, and chefs, bless them, work so hard. Angry people, never get on the wrong side of a chef. And I've done that very, very quickly.
Absolutely. You do not want to be on the wrong side of a sweaty hot chef on the other side of that pass. No chance.
But you learn so much, I think. I mean, do you think, was that, are you born with drive, do you think? And was it all hard work or what?
I often laugh because it's like, I'm a sadist child. Sadist child works hard for a living, That's the moniker. But I don't know. I mean, I've just always wanted, I thrive on the responsibility. I enjoy working, and I've always done it. And I can't imagine not doing it, and I can't imagine not putting the time and effort in and feeling proud about the work that I do. Yeah. And I try to bring that, into everything. But work is incredibly important to me in terms of my own fulfillment. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
Was money ever been a big driver for you?
It was definitely a driver for me when I was younger, because I had none.
I'm just thinking. I think when I was literally 13, I was driven by Pogs football stickers. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous as that now. Yeah. And then I think I was massively me 20s and 30s, and actually I set up a business. And now bizarrely I'm not anymore. I think you're driven by other things. I think now I'm driven for my team. I'm really driven by building a business, but I feel like I work for my team, and that almost like a slave to them. But I quite like that. Do you know what I mean? That's my drive now, making sure that I'm building something for them, which is obviously I'm building something for the family and all that type of stuff. But realistically, day to day, if I think about it, I just want to do a good job for my team around me, which is...
Yeah, it's interesting that you should say that, because I was just having a conversation with somebody else. They were like, what would be a great end result for Emma in this company? And my answer was, I'm a bit of a socialist at heart.
Yeah.
And to have a company, you know, almost on a John Lewis style basis where we're all such the beneficiaries of it. I mean, there's that great story of that guy who was earning millions, and then what he did is he decided to pay everybody a minimum salary of something like $60,000. And, you know, all of a sudden his company productivity went into overdrive. You know, in the States, you often have to have 2 jobs to maintain like a minimum level of income, and people were able to stop that. And, you know, the view that, you know, everybody in this company is so important to me that I want to bring them, you know, I want to succeed for me, and I want to succeed for them. You know, I've had more sleepless nights recently about, you know, what I can do in terms of assisting the staff with the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
Than I have about anything else in the business.
100%. Yeah, I completely. And when COVID hit, the pressure, that was probably the worst days. Truly the worst days of my life. And it was. I knew for a fact that if the business shut down, you know, it's just a name, it's a business, but that wasn't the worry. It was the worry was the fact that at the time I had like 9-10 people that depended on that job.
It comes out of my mouth minimum once a week. I've got 27 mouths to feed. I've got 27 mortgages that are relying on me to make this a success. And I'll be damned if I'm going to lose any one of them along the way, you know, through something that this company or something that I have done.
Yeah. And I actually think that mentality then also transpired when you've got to unfortunately let people go in the business. That's what I have to go. That's what I have to justify it, because if someone is underperforming and it's hurting the business, it's hurting all those other mouths to feed. And you know, as managers of businesses, you've got to make really tough decisions sometimes, and you've got to deliver news which affects someone's life negatively. Someone enjoys the job and unfortunately they're not right. But if that's having a knock-on effect to other people in the business, it's
absolutely. I mean, and it's like, you know, and that kind of thing can affect every part, not just, you know, your bottom line and your figures, but the morale in a team, and you know the culture, diluting the culture down, because, you know, there's like, I want to say a bad apple. There's no bad apples, but, you know, if you're just not 100% on board, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't need a B team. You know, I'm not Manchester United, who's got 37 people to pick from, and half of the good ones can sit on a desk, you know, on the bench. It's all about the A game, isn't it?
100%. It's become a massive part of your culture. Do you think, because I thought that was great in terms of experience of being abroad and that aspect of it and working away. I imagine you've learned so much for that. I mean, are you someone who's always taken risks? I mean, I imagine that must be quite nerve-wracking, you know, leaving your family going over there.
Oh God, no. I mean, I'm the kind of kid, I wanted to go where I used to be the worst witch, and I wanted to be sent away to boarding school, you know. My mum always says that that my first day at school, I kind of just ran off. And then I turned around and came back and said, "You are coming back for me, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes." And then I just ran off again. You know, I was, you know, never homesick. You know, I was the first one on the brownie guide. You know, like, whatever. You see, you know, and I just knew it was something that I wanted to do. But, you know, it could have been America. It could have been anywhere. I just wanted to make sure I had the best management experience. A lot of these sandwiches courses, you know, I mean, I had friends who, yes, they had a great experience. They went to Disney, but they're like standing on a coffee cart serving donuts to, you know, the Disney goers for a year. Great, made the amazing tips. It was fantastic, and the staff atmosphere was lovely. Well, I didn't want that. I wanted the experience of management.
Yeah.
You know, I had, you know, I'd been recognised, if you like, in all the kind of jobs I'd had. Very quickly, they realised that I was, you know, a confident doer, and that anything they gave me would be sorted and finished. You know, I'm a completer finisher by heart. It drives me mental having lists, although I'm surrounded by them. But they knew that if they gave it to me, it would be a job done. And so then I wanted to put some like more formal stuff around that. Clearly, the first year at university, with it being hotel management, we've done stuff that had been interesting to me, and I wanted to know more. Now, Maslow's theory of, you know, hierarchy of needs and all of these kind of stuff that, you know, were an anathema to me. It was just, you know, I just do it, and then you go, oh right, okay, that's where it fits in. And so the management training that I got with the Hilton was, you know, fascinating and eye-opening. And then I was lucky enough with the work with the business development consultancy in that, you know, I was always presented with more opportunities to do what I was best at, and was provided with the training in order to achieve that if I needed it. So, you know, I mean, again, on this transition in this company, you know, you're talking about, you know, I'm looking at that kind of corporate training now for the first time, because I need people who are great performers to be able to pass that on to their teams. You know, they are the superheroes, and now I need you to create a super team. And they're not quite used to that, you know. So train the trainer and leadership management, again, a bit of an anathema to this company in some respects. And we've all been there, you look at some corporate courses and you're like, here we go,
Absolutely.
But even if you take one thing out of it, two things out of it, that make your life better, that make it better for your teams, it is an eye-opener, and it does help you to go on these more kind of generic leadership team courses. And yeah, that I took that from both of those positions in terms of, getting into the management of this business. I often say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none in that respect. I've got AAT skills in financial accounting. I did that as a separate thing because I needed to know more about the finance of a business. Wherever I've felt a weakness, I've gone out and tried to look to, how I can make that better, and done my own research, or, enrolled on something. I'm a big, but again, the do-it-yourself thing. I always say to people, F1, companies invested billions in F1.
Yep.
It's the help function. It's the how do I, it's the FAQ of any single system that you're looking at, Google and YouTube. What are you asking me for? Excel won't go bold. I'm the person who's trying to fix your fuse box by Googling it.
yeah, same. Exactly. Yeah, I've done it about 5 times a day. So no, exactly. And I agree with you massively. I think the training aspect is overlooked so by companies for a number of reasons. I think it's difficult because I think as companies starting to cut the cost now, budget wise, energy prices through the roof and margins are getting hammered. I think people will actually, unfortunately, look at things like management courses and go, that costs us 20 grand a year there to put 5 people through. And I think it's the wrong way to do things. I also know companies that actually don't put people through them because they're scared. Once someone's got a qualification by the name, they think they're going to move on to someone, and they think I've just invested. But I think, in my opinion, now people leave because they're not given those opportunities. Yeah. It's one of the biggest selling points now with businesses when we're recruiting. Do they offer any courses? Do they offer, because people now want more from the job, and they want to progress in that job ideally. And actually, probably until the last couple of years, I didn't realize, even in my sector, because I'd never done training courses, that how important it would be. It's frustrating sometimes. I'll train in-house quite a lot, and it does work, and we'll do it. But I'll often train on things, and I feel like I'm training, nothing really change. External trainer will come in, say the same thing. Suddenly, oh, this is brilliant, eureka moment. So I think, do you know what I mean? I think it's having a different voice sometimes, and it's the a more formal setting where people take it seriously. I think they switch on more. So I think it's important.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can pass down and advice you can give, and the myths and stories that you can share.
Yeah.
But sometimes the actual putting pen to paper, being in that formal setting, it's the stuff that triggers it, because in a more formal setting, we'll go through different types of scenarios and case studies, whereas you're only addressing that one because it's arisen and you're just passing on that bit of advice. Whereas somebody, who's more pedagogically trained will be able to say, right, and this is that situation, here it is again, and here is it again, and here is it again, and you can recognize it in all these other scenarios. And you go, oh God, that's why Jim's a Burke.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I can help, Sarah.
But it is, you put it, and think if you put the theory behind something, it makes sense sometimes, massively. And even the mindset stuff. I don't know if you've ever read the Jim Paradox, stuff like that. It's really find it interesting in terms of sometimes you don't realize why you think certain things or why you do certain things until you realize how we're all built the same. It's
I've just been through an amazing course, actually. The National Grid provided some funding for Regen and Rewire, which is Women in Renewable Energies, which is a group that I'm part of. And it was about mental health, basically. And it's the same kind of thing. And it's about building your own personal quotient and being able to understand what the voices in your head are all about, where they come from, and it was amazing. It was life-changing, actually, in terms of, again, all of those things. I've read the Chimp Paradox. I've done a bit of mindfulness. I've done a bit of hypnosis and meditation, and look, there's so many different journal, all these things that you take a bit of and you think, that's useful. This actually was one of the most practical courses I've ever been on, in terms of being able to provide you with small but instantly recognizable ways of getting stuff to shut up. It just makes you more productive and happier. And, again, if I had, endless funds in the business, I think I'd send everybody in on it.
No,
Luckily,
I
I was paid for by the National Grid. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I get the link for that because I think that stuff is really, really interesting. It's awareness, isn't it? I think if you're aware of why you do things, you're much more likely to understand it and almost let it be. I think that's half it. Do you know what I mean? It's and again, something that I'm a massive advocate is mental health, because I think it's it's such a good thing now that it's talked about more. You know, it's
across the board, without a shadow of a doubt.
I mean, if I'm and I'm all in now. If someone told me 10 years ago that I'd be waking up, meditating, journaling, and doing stretching, I'd be laughing at them. But I do. Do you know what I mean? It's just them jumping in there having a cold shower. And, but it's life changing. Do you know what I mean?
And the thing about it is, especially for men. I mean, the view that men have got to have this macho persona, that the water, asbestos waterproof people who can just do everything, and they never put their heads above the parapet and go, hell, My husband lost one of his closest friends to suicide. It's devastating, absolutely devastating, and it's like a disease in males, and the view that anybody should be talking about it at any time. And women tend to do it in different ways. We are more emotional, and we do rely on our friends, and we do have those conversations, and you will get drunk over wine and cry and rage about things, and that puts in. But I mean, even that is not necessarily the right way of going about it. I'm just all about there are things in your personal life that I can't affect, because that's your personal life, But as a work environment, it's about creating one, Again, my new starter sales guy, I'm like, we'll talk targets, but we'll talk targets when you're settled. We'll talk targets. No point to be talking targets when you haven't got a pipeline. It's just a pipe dream at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm about having targets I can take to the bank.
Yeah.
If I've got a target I can guarantee that isn't going to cause you stress, sleepless nights, want to be sick, don't want to come into work, but you can deliver that for me every month.
Yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah. It's achievable, we strive for it. Yeah.
It's absolutely. And then, we talk about, that's your normal target. And then, have you got a high achiever target, and the view that, my sales guys have got this benchmark that I can take to the bank. I can forecast on, I can business plan on that. But I know that, with a fair wind, these guys are going to do, a quarter more because, because they can. Yeah. Well, that's the kind of team I want, and I've got those kind of high achievers in my team. But if they have a bad month, nobody's killing themselves about it.
Yeah. How because people have got different thoughts on this. How close do you think it's good to get to your team? Because some people say never call your team your friends, never get close to them, et cetera, et cetera. I get pretty close to my team, I would say, which it has its downsides massively. It makes it hard in certain situations. But at the same time, I feel that's who I am. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know whether that's a northern thing. We're just a bit more friendly, aren't we? We're all about. I mean, we call ourselves a friends and family team, and that's literally because some of the connections are that deep. Kelly, who's my accounts manager, is my senior engineer's sister, and Alan's son is the senior engineer in Scotland. We have got a lot of connections, and we are operating as a family. I do think and we are close like that. And I think, again, part of this transition is going to be learning as we bring in more, the randoms, the people who were just recruiting rather than, Kelly's sister's up for grabs, or, my brother wants a job, which I'm all for, because I'm a believer. Again, if you're recommended in by somebody who's already there, the view that person doesn't want to embarrass the other person,
Completely agree.
I would much rather take a recommendation from somebody who's already working here than to take in somebody who's like a cold caller to me.
And it also shows you that you did a good job, because they wouldn't recommend someone to a crap job.
No, absolutely. So it's difficult. I mean, there are certain lines, and boundaries. I've been in companies and been on those Christmas dues where you're like, really? Okay.
Same.
But it can get tricky where you've got performance issues with somebody who you can have a laugh and a joke with, but at the same time that's part and parcel of it. They're the harder bits of leadership, aren't they? It comes the rough and the smooth, isn't it? It's always difficult when you're dealing with personnel issues and having to have those hard conversations, but that's also the most rewarding as well. As you bring people through the company, you're just like, God, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They would fly, and
Yeah, 100%. Do you think you've ever been influenced by managers you've had previously?
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. There's for good and for bad, really.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I took from working in the States was, so the company with Mayor and Jabara were ran by a couple of guys who I don't believe I ever met, or I might have met one of them. I can't remember. It's going back quite far, but my particular manager there was a guy called Vince DeFonso, and they led via a theory, I guess, to a management book that one of these guys had written. It was called Fly to the Buffalo. And the view there is that you've got, if you're a buffalo, if you're a herd of buffalo, they'll follow the leader until they fall off a cliff. And I've seen that happen, the leader's like, yeah. But if they're charging in the wrong direction, or they're not listening, and they're not definitely hearing anybody behind them, that cliff can come sooner rather than later, not just for the leader, but for the whole company, or, departments in the company, as they all charge off,
Yeah.
Whereas a flight of geese take it in turns to be the leader, and they're all looking at each other to see where the wind's going and which way, and who remembers this bit, and where's the nearest watering hole, and I've spied it here, and all of that kind of thing. And so the view that Flight of the Buffalo is like, number one, what can I do? What have I done wrong, or what could I do better? What could the company do better? So the first thing where I get any kind of whiff of personal or process issues is like, is it the person or is it us?
Yeah.
And what could I be doing better? And then the view of being able to, and believe you me, it's a sharp curve that I'm still on, the ability to delegate and walk away.
Yeah, I'm on that journey. Well, yeah. Yeah.
But being able to give people the responsibility and trust that they will deliver for you, and then, be able to come in and say, that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, again, one of my other sayings is there's nothing in this company I am precious about, not one damn thing. If somebody comes to me and says, do this better, we can do this cheaper, here's something I picked up in another life, here's, have you come across this? Have you seen this? Everything's open for a discussion. Everything's open for a discussion. And I think the concern when you start growing and getting bigger is that those discussions become less and less as you become more entrenched in a process-driven environment where it is like, well, this is how we've always done it, and less about being able to be fly. And it's about the balance, isn't it? You can't expect your massive corporates to just, on the fly change stuff. It has to go through processes to make those changes. But at the same time, you can kind of lose some of that enthusiasm to get involved. If you're just involved in a team that's doing the same thing, there's no innovation, there's no excitement.
I completely agree. And I think the bigger you are, like you say, the more red tape it is. And I think we saw that in COVID. I think the amount of companies that your big, massive companies that have just was so slow to be agile.
And they still are. You're still hearing the telephone voicemails that say, "Oh, sorry, your call is important to us, but due to COVID, COVID is so 2020, my friend. What you're saying is you haven't got the staff, you haven't geared up your processes quick enough. Your home working facilities aren't up to scratch. You don't have the right equipment, and you're still suffering.
Exactly that. It's massive. And look, I guess it's one of those. If you're a team of 10, it is easy. But same time, I think businesses learn massively that they need to be agile for things now, because who knows what's around the corner. It's massively. But I think
another brick wall. That's what we seem to be getting.
You come
through one, it's like
100%. There's always something. But no, it's I think it's a big one. That to try and keep that culture as you go it is a real challenge. But like you say, if you can. I think if the decisions are made, changes in the business, I think if they're made, at least the initial idea is made by some of the business, I think they're much more likely to be adopted and to be rolled out and people to buy in, because otherwise, if it's just one owner or one manager and this is what we're doing, it's difficult. It's the balances. You can't discuss every decision because it's one of those, isn't it? But at the same time, I think if there's a number of changes in the business which are founded by a number of people in the business, I think it's a perfect balance to get.
It's about bringing people along with you, isn't it? It's the terrible thing. It's like, another X Factor journey. You're on a journey, but there is a lot of that in a business, isn't it? It's like, this is where I can see us going. This is what I think needs to be achieved. what part are you playing in this?
Yeah.
And how can we get there? And if you kind of get that buy-in, then you're all along. It's when you lose people and they're not fully supportive, or you're kind of out there ringing a bell or butting heads with people that you can, you veer off track, don't you?
100%. And I think there's certain times in the journey of a business where it's more important than it is in other times. I'm just doing just really transparent. I'm literally just doing my AGM. We've got our AGM. We've just finished our 7th year, so we've just gone to our 8th year. And I've got normally my AGMs are pretty brief, 5-10 minute chat. Then we just get on the drink all day and go to races. This year we've got quite a lot of new starters. We've just come off the back of the best pay year by far, actually, in terms of results wise. And I thought it's time to do a proper AGM, and I'm nervous, excited about it. So it just feels like we'll have at least 5 new people in the room. We'll be the biggest we've ever been, and this is the time where I feel like I need to say the right things and have that right journey in place. But it's hard. It's a real challenge, because sometimes it's difficult getting almost thinking what's on ahead, because I think I know where we're going, but it's difficult to put that pen down on paper and then go, right, okay, this is where we're going. It's a challenge.
I mean, and some people relish studying that podium spouting, like listening to the sound of their own voices, and I'm I mean, just this has frightened me to death for about a good
same. I do it every week, but it's same. I don't. And probably one of those. Do I enjoy it when doing it? Maybe, in terms of, I don't do it that often. I probably shy away from it. I just know sometimes it's important to do, isn't it? But you're right. Some people just love it, and
you see, when you look at like the big leaders of. Mind you, having said that, you say that, and I'm sat here going, right, I was just about to say Elon Musk, you don't really hear him speak.
No, you don't know.
Same with Jeff Bezos, where is he? He's not really saying anything. And then, so you look at other leaders who are closer, to what you see, is Donald Trump somebody you want to listen to on the podium? Are our leaders, doing any better at it? And so I think, you have to trust that you're coming from the right place with the company, and that, with the mouths that you've got to feed, and, and that you're trying to just deliver the best for them.
100%. Been a, we mentioned right at the start of the podcast that obviously very pleased that you're the first woman on the podcast, the female woman on the podcast, which I'm hopefully first of many. Manufacturing, engineering, construction, renewables, all these sectors are unfortunately still very male dominated, particularly on the senior side, which is really disappointing. And I think there's people trying to change, and I think it's good, but there's still a massive problem. I think still a huge problem.
Yeah, it is. But interestingly, as a woman, in renewables and in construction and in business, you find out other women, and there's a lot of us out there. I get asked. I've been asked a few times, oh, you're a woman in heat pumps. Is there any others we can speak to? And I'm like, we've got a WhatsApp group. There's a number of us out there. I just think that women tend to get on with the job. We don't feel the need to have a big dick swinging contest.
Because it's not part of the culture, I guess, is it?
No, I mean, you look at what's the lady called who runs the is it Zappi or My Energy, the EV charging company? She's just quietly snaking that market, doing her thing, and you just think, go lady, you are just. But she's not having to, she doesn't feel the need to be, banging out white papers every 2 minutes about her thoughts on where the EV charging business is going. She just seems to be, getting on with business. And I think that's the thing with women. We just tend to get on with business. Given the responsibility, and given the accountability, we will deliver, just in a slightly less, brash fashion, and I find that quite a bit. The conversation about heat pumps and stuff is definitely male, technically led, and women in engineering. I don't really class myself as a woman engineer. I'm a woman in business, and I just happen to run a renewables business that works mainly in the construction industry. So I find myself sometimes lost in that lot of voices. Because it's my team who are technical. I'm the one here, doing my processes and running my businesses, and touching all of the different levers, you know, your technology, your marketing, your business, your economics, your finances, you know. And over here, I've got great people doing great installs, you know, who've got 25, 30 years experience of doing heat losses and, you know, flow rates and all of those kind of things. So, you know, wading into that technical conversation feels like I'm going into fight with alligators, you know, if I start talking, you know, 16 meters a minute, all this kind of stuff, hydraulics. And a lot of that, you know, it is, you know, it's a bit badge wearing for me, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. I massively agree with that. You know, what's interesting, I think it's the culture of a lot of businesses which is the problem. I remember once there was a big manufacturer asked us to try and find more female leaders for their business because they didn't have enough, and actually particularly board level. And I looked at the board, everyone on the board, and they're all 55 to 60 white male. And do you mean I said, how do you expect to attract women onto the board when you're the exact same demographic? There's nothing. You're all the same. You're all from the same background. You'll speak the same. You know, there's that. You know, you've got to look at. You can't just look at let's get more women on board. You need to look at the whole thing. Whole thing. I think that echoes with a lot of manufacturing. Not as many now. That's do disservice. Manufacturing Germany is definitely getting better because there's some brilliant leaders about who. A lot of them are women, but I think years and years gone by, there's still a lot of boardrooms which are just exactly.
Well, yeah, and interestingly, my friend, she's just done her MBA, and one of the topics there that I found fascinating goes down to just something as simple as the wording in a job advert, and the words chosen will put off women from even applying, even though they are more than capable of doing the job. Because it's just written with the white male subconsciously in the head of the person who's putting that recruitment stuff together. So people like yourselves are sat there going, or the board you're speaking to, and they're going, right, we want a high flyer, go-getter, no nonsense negotiator. Straight away, women are like, oh God, that's and you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be that masculine,
brash,
mind, you know, and so women just go, oh God, that sounds like a dick swinging contest that I'm not interested in getting involved in. You know, I can clearly do the job, but you know, am I, you know, boxing my way in that interview against somebody who's like, I could do £1 million a year, so I can sell sand to the snow people. I mean, you know, that kind of ridiculous. You know, I think women are just a bit more quietly confident.
That's a good point. I mean, look, my lads in my team will kill me now, but the most successful people in my business have since day one have been women. They've been women, and
there's some phenomenal women on my WhatsApp group. You know, running businesses, juggling kids. You know,
this is it.
You know, making it work again. You know, my husband's one of the great guys as well. You know, we're very 50-50 in the home, but there's a lot of women. It's still, you know, the majority of that care falls on them, and they're running a business, or they're, you know, leading their teams, and you know, all of the other things that life throws at you. And unfortunately, I think it's still like that. And as much as, you know, we as women are, you know, fought and are fighting for equality, and you know, again, something I was having a conversation with a friend for, I was just like, you know, we're kind of factioning off now, aren't we, into, you know, equality for this group, that group, this group, the other group. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings, aren't we? And we're all looking for fair treatment. We're all looking to be respected for who we are, achieving what we do, irrespective of anything else around us, you know, what we look like, what we wear, where we come from, what we think, what we believe in, who we think we are. I'm a human being, and I'm doing this job, and I'm either doing it well or I'm not, you know, and that's fundamentally, you know, over and above, you know, being able to live in peace and have some water and some air to breathe, you know, we should all be fighting for that, and we're all factioning off, fighting against each other, you know.
I massively agree. And it's difficult for sometimes as recruiters when we're told who to find, and you just know, like you say, the wording of it sometimes, where they're saying so many words, who they want, what age profile, what gender profile, without saying it, and it's it's disappointing, and it's getting better, but I still see it. I had one of the week where I found there was a female engineer, again, an engineer happened to be female, and the response was, we haven't got any female changing rooms, and it was an old school engineering. I just thought, Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Really?
that blew my mind. Actually, that blew my
Yeah.
mind. I just thought, how in 2022 is that the case?
Yeah, no, I mean that kind of attitude is really disappointing
It
because
is.
it's just such a small change, isn't it? I mean, literally a small change. I'm sure you can find somewhere for her to go. You know, I mean, we're not talking like
Exactly.
a massive amount. You don't need to be building her a sports complex.
That's what I mean.
To come into work and get changed.
Yeah.
I mean, in 6 years, I've only come across one female heat pump engineer CV on my desk.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
I would, bring them on,
But you can probably bring that back to school as well. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yes, I think there's a lot of levers that get us to where we are, and yes, it's the unconscious bias, isn't it? Of you do science and you do art, and that cooking versus woodwork. It's still kind of around there. I know there's so many great initiatives. Women in STEM. I mean, the Rewire Regen for women in renewable energy. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and it's changing, but it feels like it's been going for years, and it feels like it's going to take years again to make the change.
I think it will, but I think the more people like you in roles like you're in, I think that's what makes it change, because ultimately it comes from the top. And I think if as a female heat, a pumping engineer, an engineer, whatever it would be, I think if they see that some of the leaders are female, I think there's more. I think they feel more comfortable. I think they don't think they need to fight quite as hard, because I bet it's exhausting needing to fight harder than men just to do the same job.
Well, I mean, it's just exhausted that, and today, I mean, there was a thing on Twitter that one of, my ladies posted about where, they were talking about one of their female engineers, and somebody underneath like, there's no kettle near her, is the love, and you're just like, oh, good gracious me.
Still here, are we? That's the thing, isn't it? I know, but and they think that's harmless, but you know what? That will put people off. That's the thing.
It does. I mean, you shouldn't have to have, like a suit of armor on to go to work, so that the comments are like bouncing off you. Everybody, there's banter, and then there's continued abuse of people, 100%. And it shouldn't have to be that way. A woman shouldn't feel that she can't walk on a construction site without having a load of crap thrown at her, or anybody for that matter. Color, creed, religion, whatever. You should be able to go about your business, and you should be judged on that, shouldn't you? You be judged on your actions, your work rate. You're either a decent plumber or you're not. No matter what color, sex, creed you are, you can either put it in or you can't.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it will change. I think because I think it's changing for the better. I mean, it's schooling, it's parenting. I mean, I think if I think about my household, I'm married to a strong, independent woman, and my little lad's 3, and he knows the boss of the house is my wife and probably my 7-year-old daughter. Do you know what I mean? We know our place and we joke about it, but I think, do you know what I mean? I think he'll be brought up to know that everyone's equal. Do you know what I mean? In that sense, and and he'll probably grow up to think women are the boss because they are in this house, but that's fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, my big girl's 24, and I do think that the younger generations coming through are just so much more open to
they are.
The equality and acceptance of, you are you, just be you, do you, be happy, and here we are. Are you any good at your job?
Exactly.
Are you a nice person? And that's where we should be kind of like judging, if we're going to judge, and everything else is like neither here nor there.
Yeah, which is sometimes an issue actually when companies say, we need a quota of this and that. Can I just find the best person for the job? That's the thing. It's very difficult. So then he's putting people in boxes. It's I completely agree. No, massively. In terms of the business now, then obviously 2.5 years, 3 years down the line, is it?
Yeah, just over 3 years.
Over 3 years now. So what's the next sort of couple of years look like then?
Well, I mean, we doubled for the first 3 years. I always forecast that this 4th year would be more of like a consolidation year for us.
Yeah.
Very wary of getting too big too soon.
Yes.
The view that we are in this transition period as a business, creating those more robust. There's a lot of again, we go back to the superhumans and the myths. But we have processes. We've clearly proven that they work. But a lot of them are still kind of word of mouth. You do it this way, you do it that way, and we need to kind of start, filling in those recipe cards and becoming, more serious about that. But I think actually, a lot of the work that he's doing is mainly around the HR. It's a training. We know it. It's about writing it down and then making sure everybody is aware that we all know we do it like this. But can you please stop missing part D out? You just go straight to E. And so that is kind of the view for the next. This is the journey we're on, next 3 to 6 months. But I mean, this particular industry is on rails. Okay. And I'm happy to be part of it. And I just want to make sure that in my small way, and with the places, the councils I sit on and the groups that I'm involved with, we're continuing to maintain standards, and that it's all about doing the best job that we can for the consumer. And I mean, would I like to double again? Am I going to plan to double again? That's kind of where I'm at. So let's see what that next leg of the journey looks like.
Exactly that. I mean, you seem like you still love it. You seem like you still is it? You still love going in every day?
Yes. I mean, again, I have my own office set up. We talked about earlier about working and hard working. So it doesn't switch off at 5. I'm
going to say because it's hard, isn't it? I mean, do you think you've nailed a switch off at any time, or?
I am in a far better place this year than I was last year, without a shadow of a doubt. And the team that I've got around me is. It's taken a while to get some of the strategic people that I needed into strategic positions, so that I wasn't always the de facto. Oh well, I've done that job before. I know what I'm doing. I'll pick it up and I'll run with it. Yeah. And so for the first time in a long time, I feel like. And it's just worked out so well with the business plan I had. Sometimes there's a bit of serendipity, isn't there, where these things work. But the view that I have got some time to drain the swamp instead of continually fighting the alligators, because I've got some great people in position, and that those great people in turn are going to help me form great teams. That's just going to take this business from strength to strength. 25 years this business has been trading, and it's not going down on my watch.
Isn't it? I think it's the people in your business that allow you to switch off, because if you got trust, you get everything. It takes some time to get that, doesn't it? Probably took me a lot. Probably took me 4 or 5 years until I felt like I could switch off. It took me 5 years to have a 10-day holiday. I've not got up to 2 weeks.
You've not got 2 weeks.
Maybe my 10th anniversary, but it took me a while to be able to switch off and probably understand the importance of needing to as well. I don't think you feel like you need it on the other days. I think you just think, well, I love what I do. Why do I need it? And then it creeps up and you feel the stress.
Yeah. No, it's funny, isn't it, when it's kind of your own business and you're sat there and you're having a nice time. You just think, oh, I'll just check it.
Exactly. Yeah, this doesn't work.
And then you're just like, you just want to keep your hand in there, don't you? And
of course you do. I know. I actually, I think day 1 I deleted my emails, LinkedIn app, and then I just day 6 I just had a little look. Do you know what I mean? That's one of those.
Just a little look there.
Exactly that. Right, I've got some very quick fire questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, what's the most innovative technology or strategy that you've implemented to help change your team or the business for the better, would you say?
Well, I think that's where I'm right in the middle of now. It is innovative for this business to start becoming a bit more corporate.
Okay.
And the view of having when we resumed this, we were very much about like, we all kind of know what we're doing. We're all just going to get on with it. And now it's about making that cohesive, and having teams and meetings and all of these things that we've kind of shunned and run it our way. All this fun stuff now needs to stop, apparently.
Gonna get serious now.
So for me, that's a big thing to deliver in this business. So
nice, love it. What three words, three things make up a good leader, would you say? First three things that come to your head.
Listening.
Yeah.
But not just listening, hearing.
Mhm.
You know, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, to actually take the time. And I think, again, you know, the view that meetings, if done correctly, do allow everybody to be heard. Whereas if you're just passing stuff over the desk, you kind of, you know, you're only half in the conversation, aren't you? So listening and hearing. I think, you know, leading by doing, by example, be the role model that you want everybody else to be. You know, we kind of seem to like that in all areas of our society and stuff. You know, the view that, you know, oh, I can be, you know, a 90 million pound a week footballer, but, you know, can give my wife a bit of a slap and that's okay, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, or go to a party during COVID-19. You know, you know, you should be the role model. You know, so you're the one who is. They should be looking at you and going, yeah, you know, not that.
Set the tone.
Where's he? What's she doing? I'm not seeing her. You know, where is she when the shit's going down?
Yeah. All right, this is BBC.
So listening, hearing, you know, talking the talk, you know, as well as walking the walk, and I think being open and approachable, really, you know, for me, if you've got, you know, the clearly successful leaders out there who, you know, had iron wills and a distinctive vision, and it's, you know, seems to have got us into not great places, you know.
Exactly that. Good
so
answer.
I mean, I go back to what I said before. There's not a damn thing in this business that I feel that precious about that I wouldn't be open to change in a heartbeat if somebody in this business came and said, do you know, I think there's a better way. And,
I think that's an important lesson for a lot. I think that's an important lesson. That's the sort of thing people hear and reflect a little bit, because I think that's really important, because I don't think every leader is like that. I think they just presume they know it's that they've got themselves to this stage of their career and up the ladder that what they say should go. I don't think that's the right way.
Yeah, no, again, you know, open and approachable. It's not just, you've got, I think, you know, as a leader, you're not just sailing the boat, you're looking at the weather, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What the stars doing, what's next year's economic forecast look like, you know, what's going off in the world that might impact this business, and, you know, so, you know, but then being open and approachable, and going, you know, both ways, isn't it? You know, look, guys, there's a storm on the horizon, you know, how are we going to sort this out, versus, right, I've seen the whirlwind over there and this is what we need to do.
Exactly that. And just final question. So this is, I don't know if you're a fan of podcasts, we're a fan of Stephen Bartlett's CEO podcast. I'm completely stealing what he does at the end of his. I'm not going to make any lie about that. I don't think he'll be suing my podcast. He has a tradition where he asks the last guest a question to answer the next guest. And the last guest I had on, I asked, is Andrew McNally. He's an engineering manager at a company called Thomas Swan, who sort of chemical pump manufacturer. He asked, can you, it's a bit of an interview question, so are you ready for this? He said, can you name a time where you've had a failing member of staff throughout your career and you've managed to transform them and change them around? Tough one.
No.
Tremendous. Well, to be fair, if you've never had any failing staff, you're doing so well.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't come across that many failing staff, and the ones who I have, you know, who failed in businesses where I've been a part of, I've understood too late where things could have been differently.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In two cases, in both cases.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can resonate with that upon reflection. Yeah.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and almost people that I've thought would get there, not done anything about it, they never got there, and they might have got there if I'd done something about it earlier. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, good answer. Like that. Excellent. And just finally, obviously, your mark in terms of renewables, renewable construction, there's a lot of good stuff happening there right now, but nothing's perfect. How do we improve that market? Do you think now? What's the biggest issue that they should be tackling?
now where we are with heat pumps, I mean, I think the renewables per se is on a rail,
Definitely.
and there's whole different sectors within that sector, so, grid style generation, solar, mega wind, those kind of things are, clearly, where do we get our electricity from, and how is that going to be generated going forward? And then you've got, electric vehicle chargers and solar and battery. Solar and battery are having a whale of a time. It's the floodgates have, opened for that market, and they're having the best time of their life. Great. The thing where we are with heat pumps at the moment is, for me, the most disappointing thing is the lack of consistent support from the government. The lack of positive awareness raising, the fact that we've even had to have, the new prime ministerial run-up has all been like, so we're going to pull those subsidies, or we're not going to pull those subsidies, or we're going to help people insulate their homes, we're not going to help people insulate their homes. Where heat pumps are the no regret choice for decarbonising the current heating stock of the UK. We can mess around with hydrogen till the cows come home, and it will be till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, it needs to happen now. And the people who want to do it have got the money to do it. Great. So, this government is supporting those who can afford to do it. And in fact, from what I can understand, a big chunk of this government's plans in terms of decarbonising heat in this country is funded by me and you. Yeah. In fact, most of their renewables plans is funded by me and you. Private sector investment of 500 billion or something, is all funded by us borrowing money, or us having the money. And there's a lot of people who haven't got the money or the wherewithal to borrow that money. And how are we going to support them? But outside of, the arguments over whether subsidies should exist or shouldn't exist, or are bigger or smaller than they are, unless the government consistently says, insulate your homes, install a heat pump, insulate your homes, install a heat pump, and still batters around, oh, well, it's a bit of a technology, I'm not sure it works, oh, we'll have to wait for it to work, oh, insulate your homes, I'm not quite sure, we'll support it with the Green Homes Grant, but then we'll take it away with the bus scheme. People are just sat there just going, and those who can are doing, but there are a lot of people who could but are worried about the money situation. We're about to go into a recession, that's what it looks like. Or, what's another brick wall? We've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've got the Ukraine, what's the other hill that's, we're about to walk into? Never mind a recession, is there something else that's going to come out of the woodwork? But without that, consistent messaging, and without some support, I just think we're only going to touch the surface, and the opportunity in terms of net zero. I mean, was somebody talking about cancelling net zero as a thing? I forget about it. We'll just see whether we burn or not. We'll flip a coin, take our chances.
Gamble that one, yeah.
It's got to be consistent. It's got to be consistently that this is the right thing to do. This is a good thing to do. This is the right thing to do. This is a good thing to do. And I just think, people, we need 64,000 installers. Are worried about making the jump because, is the government going to change its mind and say, I'll tell you what, we're going to go all nuclear, it's fine. Or, actually, Elon Musk decided to invest 5 billion in our infrastructure and we're going to go full 100% hydrogen. There's just so many mixed messages out there. The consumer's just a bit like, looking around their own home, and, those who can are trying to do.
But it needs to be told what to do.
It needs to be consistent. I say we had the whole Y2K, Millennium Bug government announcements, and we had the whole, get your TV digital ready.
I remember that.
Announcements. You need to be, are you low carbon ready? Are you low carbon ready? 2050 is I live bat away. There's no awareness, but that was great. And what a way to end it. Talk about good speeches. That was a great mic drop speech. But look, it's been a pleasure. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think there's so much there for people to take away, just in terms of building a business, how difficult it is at times, but how rewarding it is at times. I touched on the mental health aspects of it, the women in business aspects of it, all sorts of stuff. So look, I think people get a lot of value of that, and really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me to be part of it. It's been a blast.